Well, good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you to this regular meeting scheduled for Wednesday, March 27th for the San Bernardino International Airport Authority. At this time, we will ask Councilmember Sanchez to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Council Member. We appreciate all of our board members here and their busy schedules, and we thank you for your attendance here. At this time, we are going to go a little bit out of order. I will recognize speakers. If you do have a public comment, we will ask that you fill out a pink slip, turn it into our clerk. At this time, I will recognize the following individuals: Mario Vasquez, followed by Angelica Gomez, followed by Andrea Vidari. Mr. Vasquez, welcome.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the Airport Authority for responding to our first public records request promptly. I'm here representing Teamsters Local 1932 and our coalition specifically on sustainable economic development. So last time we were here, we had a lot of questions, and many of those questions have been answered. We still have a few outstanding questions, though, and have submitted another request, and we hope to get a response to that request very soon. Unfortunately, from what we can tell, many of our concerns about the Eastgate project and the process by which it has been approved remain. Thankfully, because the ground lease is still being negotiated, the window is still open to negotiate a better deal. The organizations here are proposing that the Airport Authority revisit the approval of the Eastgate project pending a robust community process that takes into account the interests of the immediate community and broader impacted parties. We believe the Airport Authority should conduct a series of town hall forums in the impacted neighborhoods with required attendance by representatives from the San Bernardino International Airport, project developers, and the tenant. Our organizations are willing to help in this effort, including conducting canvassing operations to inform the community and turn people out for these events. I'm going to leave my comment for now, and I'd like to pass the mic on forward to my colleague Angelica from the Labor Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Sorry. Thank you for welcoming me. I am from the Inland Empire Labor Council. I'm here representing the Inland Empire Labor Council, and we represent over 180,000 members in San Bernardino and Riverside counties. So based on our collective experience and research we've done in other sustainable development projects in California, we believe the Airport Authority must create a community-led oversight board for monitoring and enforcement of standards implementing through the Community Benefit Agreement between community stakeholders, the project developer, and the tenant. Pending a deeper engagement with the community like we have proposed, we believe a community benefit agreement should at least include a project labor agreement for construction work that guarantees job quality standards, provides that a significant portion of construction work be reserved for local residents, and ensure efforts to have all the new apprentices be from cities surrounding the airport. The creation of job centers that will be the first source of employment at the Eastgate development and provide job training to workers from surrounding areas and workers who experience barriers of employment, including single parents, former foster youth, veterans, chronically unemployed, formerly incarcerated, and recipients of public benefits. An enforceable timeline that outlines benchmarks for the numbers of jobs created as well as the quality of those jobs, including restrictions to use of temporary employment, a commitment of employers not to disrupt or interfere with communications between labor unions and workers, and a guaranteed living wage. That's going to be my comment, and I'll pass it on to my other colleague.
Thank you. The next speaker recognized is Andrea Vidari. Ms. Vidari, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea. I'm with the Center for Community Action and Environmental Justice. We're a community-based organizations that have been looking for solutions to some of the environmental burdens that many communities are disproportionately impacted from. And in the past couple of years, we've really focused on air quality, given that this area ranks in the top in the nation for the worst ozone. And as you guys all may know, ozone and particulate matter causes things such as exacerbated lung asthma attacks, reduced lung capacity, reduced lung function, especially in kids. We're talking about respiratory illnesses and anything as far as cancers by our air quality. So that's what brings us here today, and it's to encourage us to take take advantage of the opportunity of the Eastgate project to require that it be the best type of project and the safest type of project. So as my other partners have stated, some feasible and practical solutions to this to lessen the impact and bring more resources into the community. Some of those things might be a legally binding commitment to reduce impacts on surrounding communities, including an industry-leading zero-emission plan, soundproofing, providing air filters to the affected schools and residencies, utilization of diesel equipment that's retrofitted with the best available emissions control devices, electrification of equipment whenever possible, continual studies of the health impacts of the airport operations on the surrounding communities, and a community-led implementation of a regional noise ordinance for plane and truck traffic. Further improvements to surrounding communities could include providing local, minority, and women-based opportunities in the future for retail and commercial space, airport funds for improved infrastructure to deal with the truck traffic, funds for public transit, improvements to connect residents to jobs and to mitigate the traffic congestion that this will cause, funds for green and public spaces, including vegetative barriers along designated truck routes, funds for the construction of sizable indoor space, etc. We're not asking for flying cars here. We're asking for very feasible, on-the-market requirements that we should be requesting from these types of projects if they're going to be in our community and if we are going to be hosting them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sean Martinez. Mr. Martinez, welcome.
Good afternoon. Just kind of sum up what we've been saying, the Eastgate project in its current form leaves a lot to be desired. The process to engage the community, in our opinion, has been nowhere near sufficient. There are discrepancies between the EIR and public statements made by the airport authority regarding the economic benefits this project is supposed to bring. The numbers quoted in the EIR, I think, is 1,726 jobs, and the press releases have been anywhere between 3,000 and 4,000. And as it stands, we're once again selling an asset for less than it's worth out of desperation. The community is here to demand more. Air cargo capacity is limited in the region. We've got a few major airports that can handle a large operation such as this, and that gives us leverage, and we should use that leverage to actually negotiate a deal with the developer and the eventual tenant that will provide a brighter future for our communities. So. I didn't introduce myself, I apologize. My name is Sean Martinez. I'm with the Teamsters Union. The Teamsters just in Southern California alone represent over 150,000 members. We've got thousands of members in the cities that you represent, and they're impacted by this development in a number of ways, obviously as residents, but also as workers, workers in the goods movement industry who have the best jobs when it comes to this type of operation. And bringing in a company that's going to bring down the standards of those jobs is something that we do not want to stand for. So Mario mentioned some engagement that we think needs to happen with the community. If you all can work with us on that, we're open to that. But we're going to be doing that ourselves. We're going to be canvassing starting this weekend. We're going to be organizing our own town hall forums to talk about this issue. We'd love to partner with you all. We have met with a couple of the members of this board, and we appreciate you taking the time to do that with us. And we've also been reached out to by Mr. Burrows, so we look forward to meeting with him as well. We're here to engage, to communicate. I'll try to get the best deal that we possibly can for the residents of this area and the workers in this region. So thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much. At this time, our meeting will adjourn into closed session, and we ask for your patience. And if you want to speak at the end, please fill out a slip. We'll hand it to the clerk. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you. Okay, thank you for joining us. We will reconvene our public portion, and we will ask for a report on closed session. Mr. Burrows?
Mr. Counselor, any reportable action?
There was no reportable action taken in closed session.
Very good. Moving on to our open session, we will move on to items to be added or deleted. Mr. Burrows?
We have one amended item or added item on your agenda, and that was a subsequent notice. And I believe that's noted in your packet. It would be item number 12.
All right. Is that all?
Yes.
Very good. Moving on to item F, conflict of interest disclosure. Are there any members that would like to note a conflict? Having seen none, moving on to G, informational items. G number 2A, Mr. Burrows, the Executive Director's Report, if you would, please.
So thank you. We have a few here today, and the first, actually, the timing of this meeting worked out well for us. It's not often that our California calendar is aligned with that of the District of Columbia, but our federal advocate in Washington, D.C., Mr. David Turch, and his team is actually here with us today, and I'd like him to come forward and say a few words and update us on all the goings on in our federal government. So, Mr. Turch.
David Church.
Mr. President, members of the board, I was a little disappointed when I heard Mr. Burrows' emphasis on the word few. I had prepared 41 minutes of scintillating and concise comments for you. I guess we'll have to go to few. Good to be with you. I'm David Turch, own David Turch and Associates. We are a firm that has a client base from Japan to the EU. In the U.S., from Oregon to Florida, we are the dominant public sector firm, perhaps now in all of California, certainly in the Los Angeles basin. One of our specialties is transportation and particularly aviation. Locally, we do or have represented Palmdale, Burbank, Ontario, and of course, my favorite client right here in San Bernardino. Nationally, Orlando, the Gerald Ford International, and the list goes on and on. We have recently done a reorganization that affects you directly, and this is the first time we've reorganized or made personnel changes in a decade. We have added Rob Wigington, whose most recent employment was as the executive director of the Nashville International Airport in Tennessee. Before that, he was deputy at Houston, in San Diego, at JFK in New York. He worked for the Port Authority in New York and headed the transportation divisions for Booz Allen Hamilton and Fleischman Hillard. We're very happy to have him as a part of the team, and I'm sure he's going to make a real contribution to the efforts at this particular location. This feels almost for me like coming home. I have such a great long affiliation with this institution and this locality, so it's just really good to be here. And I can remember way back in the days when we were handling the conversion under the BRAC process, one of at least the 5 most difficult things that I've accomplished in 30 years in this business was the transfer of some of the property here. I can remember one case in particular, and I'll try not to bore you with stories, but the BRAC officer, whose name I remember to this day, that snake, was John Smith, and he told us that the most we were going to get was 600 or 900 and some acres in transfer from a golf course that used to be on the end of the runway. And I disputed that, saying the sister agency had said the minimum transfer to account for acreage was something like 1,150. And correspondingly, he certainly should accede to the minimum acreage by the sister agency. And his answer was tough. We know what you're going to do. You're going to call the secretary's office, which I did, but he was there before I. And then I was going to haul him before a congressional committee, and he said, so far, I'm 7-0, so make me 8-0. I called the then press secretary to the president, good friend David Gergen, who I suggested this was not in the president's interest, it wasn't in our nation's interest. We certainly needed the acreage, and I'd hate to make this a New York Times investigative report, a front page story to the Journal, or maybe a 60-minute show. And he said, I needed to do whatever I needed to do. The difficulty or the advantage in my life is I always know I'm going to win for you. I just don't always know how I'm going to do it. And I remember it was late in the evening, staring out the window of my office when it finally came to me. Since the Pentagon was of no particular use and the Congress was of no particular use, it was the blue suits. I called a friendly general in Colorado Springs, explained what the situation was, had a call back from Secretary of Defense at that time, Les Aspin, the next morning saying, hey, General so-and-so. I said, no kidding, what did Frank want? We got 1,357 acres in that transfer. And that's kind of been the history of our relationship. I'm so pleased to be working with you. More recently, if I just brought you up to speed, the good mayor was in Washington just a few days ago. We had a request that the Royal Air Force, turned out to be the Marines, actually had stopped here at San Bernardino, and we were going to encourage them to stop on a more regular basis and use this airport as the jumping off spot for 29 Palms and wherever they might go in Southern California. We were successful in arranging, first of all, a meeting with Colonel Neil Sutherland, who is in charge of that detachment at the embassy. And then I suppose, in part, because we also happen to represent a major defense contractor out of the UK, we were invited to have drinks at the home of Vice Marshal Gavin Parker. I think it was a good, productive afternoon. I can tell you, I certainly enjoyed the scotch. The mayor had a glass of water. But in any event, it was really productive. And on the two bookends of where we've been with this institution, I want to thank you for the confidence you've shown in my firm in allowing me to serve as your advocate in Washington. And I should say, I get credit for things like a visit to the Vice Marshal's home. I didn't do any of the work. Ms. Pendergrass here did all of the work from beginning to end and arranged it all, so thank you, Elena. And there's no additional money involved. We're facing a lot of issues at the moment. We certainly have an experience we're not talking too much about to continue some of the funding in the BRAC process. We hope that that comes to fruition at the moment. It's clouded a little bit in the president's using some of the Milcon money for the construction of the wall, and we don't know how that might or might not affect any program that we put together for you. We know that CBP has been important for you. We have a more recent victory in that escapade. But when it comes to CBP, it has now been my view for about a year that there may be an opportunity to separate the Inland Empire out of Los Angeles. Why are we subject to LA? They have enough to do with LAX. They have enough to do with the ports in San Pedro and Los Angeles. Why don't we create another region that could include everything from Orange County down to the border and out to Las Vegas? And we could do this because at the moment we could be the border region when in fact there is no federal statutory definition of the border. So I've been working on it for about a year. This being Washington, that's a pretty short time, so give me a little bit more time. We'll see where that goes. Of course, we have the usual funding from the FAA, other DOD, Department of Commerce. We'll continue to keep you informed with those efforts. When I talk about the Congress, and I'll be really brief about where we are, I think one of the salient features of Washington at the moment is that the executive branch for the first couple years of this administration was essentially hollow. We have about 700 positions that are deemed critical, requires confirmation by the Senate, and of that number, we filled fewer than half until a few months ago. And these were people like deputy secretaries and administrators. And we've run across a couple of instances, one really locally, Riverside Transit Authority right next door. This required a telephone call from me to the transit administrator to get an extension on some funds that were coming up for being called back. Simple telephone call. There's nobody at the desk. Nobody can make the decision. We worked 2.5 weeks on that to get just an impromptu agreement with civil servants on their side and most of the staff of RTA to not rescind those funds. So those are some of the difficulties. That situation has become ameliorated in the past couple of months. The vice president has interjected himself, has proposed a number of candidates, and we're now down to just 144 of the 700 that have not yet been nominated. It pertains to you directly because the administrator of the FAA has been acting. Well, we now have a nominee, Steve Dixon. He's been in the industry, a Delta airline official. We're looking forward to having his nomination confirmed and take that office as administrator of the FAA. When we look ahead to budget items, we think the caps, and we can get into the weeds on budget and appropriations, but the caps from 19 are likely to continue for fiscal year 2000. We're probably not going to write a new budget. Earmarks are in the works, but whether we do not have an agreement between the House and Senate Appropriations Committees of exactly how earmarks would be administered. So whether they appear is beginning to look more doubtful to me, and it matters to you because I've been like the king of earmarks. So you've done really well on earmarks over the years, and if we get them back, I would expect you'll do well in the beginning. In any event, that's kind of where Washington is. Thank you for allowing me more or less to come home. It's just so good to be here through a long affiliation. And as I say, I want to thank you very much for listening to me. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And since I hear none, I want to thank you again for listening to me.
Thank you, David. Lena,
Thank you.
we really appreciate your time and the work you do back in D.C. for us. Thanks.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So I have one report and update from Ms. Ferris. So this pertains to your agendas. Jennifer, if you'd just remind everybody on our move to go electronic here.
Yes. So as the commission knows, in the past, it has been past practice that we print and hand deliver packets to each member entity. Due to unnecessary costs and inefficient use of staff time, it is now our intent to stop that altogether. These costs include expenses for printing, toner, per page printing costs, printer repair costs, labels, etc., and they cost about $3,500 to $4,000 annually. So now it is our intent to just provide agenda packets electronically on our website. They will continue to be on our website, www.SBIAA.org, and any commissioner that would like an iPad assigned to them to access the packet electronically during the meeting can come up to me and I can assign you an iPad if that is your choice. And that's the end of my report.
And, in a show of solidarity, next meeting will not have this with me. It will be tough, but I will try. I know. So thanks, Jen, on that. Last but not least, we have some pretty exciting news from one of our largest tenants on the airport today. A little company called Unical Aviation, and we're very, very pleased to have Mr. Dave Graham with us here today. And Dave, please come forward and tell us what you've been working on. Oh.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I'm not quite as eloquent a speaker as the gentleman before, but I'll try to do my best.
Cool.
About 4 years ago, the military decided to start auctioning off Blackhawks, UH-60s, and Chinooks CS-47 helicopters. And for the first time, the intent was to take the funding that they got and reinvest it back into the military, which is a pretty good deal. So my boss, Mr. Tan, in his wisdom, decided that it would be kind of fun. Let's go buy some helicopters. None of us knew anything about helicopters. We knew fixed-wing aircraft, but we were about to find out real fast about helicopters. So in the last 3 years, we've acquired, I think, close to 45 helicopters, 35 Blackhawks, and 12 Chinooks. Now the question was, what are we going to do with them? Well, we've been approached by everybody under the sun all over the world. And within the last 6 months, we were approached by Colson Aviation. If any of you know who Colson is, they fly in and out of San Bernardino all the time during the fire season. They also fly in Australia quite extensively. So we have spent the last few months, and on March 1st, we announced a joint venture with Colson Aviation to convert a number of our Blackhawks and CS-47s into firefighters. The work is going to be done both here in San Bernardino. All the heavy maintenance will be done here, with the majority of the modifications. Some of the engineering is going to be done up in Vancouver, where Colson is based. The exciting part about this is the technology that Colson is using is state-of-the-art. They are one of the only companies in the world right now that is approved with night vision goggles. They're doing that with their C-130. I think they're getting ready to get approved for the 737 firefighter that has been in here a couple of times within the last several months. They've also modified another 737. The tank design is very similar to what's in the C-130s. It's proven throughout the world. From what we've gathered talking to CAL FIRE and the U.S. Forest Service, they love it. And that's why we chose to go with these folks. To tell you how fast things are happening, the first 2 aircraft without tanks are going to be ready to fly for the on-call season this year using Bambi buckets. We hope to have both of those done within the next 45 to 60 days. This time next year, we will have 4 aircraft, 2 Blackhawks and 2 Chinooks, ready for the exclusive use contracts, all with internal tanks in them. There are a number of internal tanks throughout the world, but again, we chose to go with these folks because we thought it was the best. In addition to what this is bringing in for these modifications, Colson Americas has decided to move their base of operations here to San Bernardino. We're going to be sharing a portion of the building and the hangar with them. They actually have a C-130 in there right now that they're doing maintenance on. Since we haven't done C-130 maintenance before, we're being force-fed with a fire hose to learn how to do it. But that's pretty much what we're used to, considering we started out with, I believe, 15 aircraft here on the ground, and we're at about 125 at last count, and still growing. So that being said, open up to any questions you might have. We're really excited about what it's doing. Mike and Mark and the rest of the airport have been great. Some of this stuff has happened on very, very short notice, and we appreciate everything that the airport has done for us.
Dave, I haven't talked to you in a while, but just a quick update. Are you guys still looking at trying to do C-checks through any of your large hangars?
We now have C-check approval on 737.
Okay.
The entire fleet, classics as well as the next gen, A320s. We've applied for 757 and 767. with the FAA being shut down, it pushed everything back about 30 days. So we're waiting on the audit. And last week we applied for the Q400 as well.
And I think Mike mentioned that you guys are going to try to take a few more airplanes apart as you add more demolition equipment, or?
Absolutely. Last year, I think when we started out, our goal was to be able to do 15 aircraft a year. Last year we did 30. Our goal is 50 plus this year.
Okay.
And in addition to the heavy maintenance that you asked about, in the last 6 months we have our own TC now, Unical does, on the UH-60, and within the next 30 days we will have our own TC on the CH-47, and the intent is to expand our maintenance capabilities into the helicopters as well as the engines that are on them as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you guys started off with Unique Aviation with about 15 employees when you first got here, and now you're up to?
193 as of Monday.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for the update.
Thanks, Dave.
Appreciate it.
That concludes our reports.
Very good. I'm extremely excited about Unical, and thank you very much. We appreciate the investment here locally in our airport. San Bernardino region is impacted with jobs and job creation. These are fantastic the outcome here for our airport really is that of job creation and economic resurgence for our community. We thank you for your investment. Thank you for your update. This time we will move on to our commission consent items. Do I have a motion?
I'll second.
All right. If there's no objection, or do we need a roll call and a vote on that, Madam Clerk?
Certainly. Member Navarro?
Yes.
Member Popescu?
Yes.
Member Valdivia?
Yes.
Member Lilburn?
Yes.
And Member Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you.
And Madam City Clerk, I did forget to call the roll. So if there's no objection, we will just recognize members present here in the chair.
And Member
so my apologies.
Woods is in the audience.
All right, very good. Moving on to item I, commission action items. Are there any public speaker slips on any of these items? All right, seeing none. Item number 9, Mr. Burrows.
So Mr. Garay is on a much due spring break trip with his young daughter. So he is not here today, but in his stead is his assistant finance director, Alka Chudasama. And I'm going to turn that over to Alka. So please.
Hi, good afternoon. The proposed budget adjustment needed because the current FBO HVAC system is failing, and it requires some repairs and possible replacements of certain parts of the system. So we are asking for requesting a new line item in FBO fund, 450,000. That would be net increase in expenditure. And it will be offset by a previous budget adjustment that was done in February commission meeting. That was positive 445,000 net adjustment.
I'll move the item with a question.
Sure, go ahead.
So did we anticipate needing to replace that, or is it something new?
No, we did. I mean, we knew coming out of the last summer, if those that were in the FBO, the area, the zone around the conference room and towards the back by the theater was unseasonably hot. And as we researched it further, we found that that zone of the system was failing. We needed to really engineer a solution, and that took a little bit of time. And so we didn't want to presume a cost without having hard numbers. That's why you have it before you today.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
All right, very good. If there's no other questions, and Madam Clerk, if you would, please.
Yes. Member Navarro?
Yes.
Member Popescu?
Yes.
Member Valdivia?
Yes.
Member Lilburn?
Yes.
Member Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 10, approving a contract with Ellison Mechanical. Mr. Burrows.
So I'm going to have Mr. Harris, our manager of capital projects, fill you in on what we're going to do with an HVAC system. So Jim, very timely.
Thank you very much.
This is a 10-year-old heating, air conditioning, and ventilation system that is progressively failing over the years. What we're going to do is we're going to take the system apart. We're going to clean all of any type of debris or muck out of the piping system. We're going to test all the components. We're going to rebuild pumps and motors and bring the system back up to its original working conditions. So this contractor is going to be hired to do this work, and we are looking forward to get this up and running within about a month and a half. Thank you.
Very good. Are there any questions?
So this is related to the item we just approved?
It is. You had to do the adjustment first, otherwise the fund didn't exist.
For that amount, we're not replacing, but just fixing it.
We are going to, the plan is to replace one of the air handlers on the roof. The contractor believes that we can repair it and get it back into shape. There is also a second piece of equipment that we need to take a much closer look at. That's the water tower on the roof. And the funding will hopefully cover any type of additional costs above and beyond the $100,000 for the contractor.
And if we were to replace it, it would cost how much?
The unit on the roof that may be replaced is about $45,000, but there's other issues with that because the weight of the unit is over 10,000 pounds, and if we were to replace it, it will take much more engineering solution. So what the reason for this is to get the system back up and running as it is now, and then take a real hard look at how we can improve the system to make it last longer.
So just to make sure I'm clear, we're not replacing the HVAC unit, we're fixing it.
The plan was to replace it, but we're going to look into fixing it first, which will be much less expensive.
Okay, but if we were to actually replace it, what would be the cost of that?
That particular unit is about $30,000.
So we're basically allocating $100,000 to do a lot more than replace that unit then?
Yes, we're going to clean the entire system.
I see. Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? If not, do I hear a motion for approval?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, if you would, please.
Member Navarro?
Yes.
Member Popescu?
Yes.
Member Lilburn?
Yes.
Member Valdivia?
Yes.
Member Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Moving on to item number 11. This is a review the status of the action plan. Mr. Burrows.
So I'm just going to go to the second slide as usual. I will not recapitulate all of Mr. Turch's updates. I don't think I can do that the way he can. International trade initiatives, as some of you know, we've been working on our planning for that each year. Around this time, we do look to re-up our strategies as an international airport to look at how we promote our not only services but capabilities out there. One that we have just settled on is on May 1st. We just got good support from our partners at the California Inland Empire District Export Council, Cal State San Bernardino, our friends at San Manuel, to host a World Trade Month breakfast. Your president has gracefully agreed to be the welcoming remarks on that fair day, and we will be sending out save the dates to you all. Very pleased. We got great support from our friends at CDEC, and hope for a good showing. It'll actually be at the Bear Springs Hotel. San Manuel graciously allowed us to, try out their new event center there, and it should be a good time. And so that one will be up on your docket coming up May 1st. So I'll send a follow-on email on that. And I believe we also had an invite from the County of San Bernardino, and maybe our president can mention that. The county is working on a trade mission to South Korea, and they've asked for input from the airport. So that's what we got cooking.
Very good. I am grateful for the partnership with our San Bernardino International Airport Authority in my request to our executive director to also include individuals here in the region specifically on our airport and airport operations, if they could join me in this delegation, along with San Bernardino County, the airport. My apologies. The mission will be conducted April 20th through 27th. Because of a pre-planned family vacation, I'll be cutting my family vacation a little short, but I will still be able to catch up with the trade delegation from the county, and we're very excited about the opportunity. So I think some of our staff, in fact, Mr. Burrows may be joining us, and we're excited about that. And we'll soon announce more individuals joining us from this airport on this trade delegation. This is a great opportunity to highlight the airport, to highlight partnerships, and really spotlight the airport operations and what inventories we have to attract more business here. And we're excited about that. I'll be providing a report once upon completion of my trip to South Korea. This is a great opportunity. Again, and we're grateful for our partnership with the county.
Thank you.
Very good.
So next month, you're going to get at least an update on potential marketing initiatives for the balance of the fiscal year. We went through that with our marketing ad hoc, and thank you all for your time. That was most appreciated. That will be coming up in April. And then ALCA would be totally mad at me if I didn't mention that we are actively working on budget prep for next year. So that's
Very
on the
good.
horizon. Thank you.
Are there any questions, comments from board members? I want to just encourage the opportunity for the Finance Ad Hoc Committee, if there's an opportunity for the finance, as we prepare for the budget, and we understand that the fiscal year is soon approaching, that it might be a good opportunity to resurrect the Finance Ad Hoc Committee or convene those meetings so we can begin that process.
Yeah, absolutely. With your recent elections, in that sense, that committee was previously formed by resolution. So the executive officers are the Finance and Budget Committee, and they also form as the Audit Committee as well. So thank you. We will work on that right away.
Very good. Any other final comments on that?
I would echo those. I was going to bring that up as related to the next item because they're interrelated when it comes to finances. But I'd like to see us convene as a Finance Committee as soon as we can, because obviously, with two board members that are new, it's good to educate ourselves so we don't just get bombarded with the actual budget in June, but be prepared ahead of time. So.
Absolutely, and it is a little different than your city budgets. It's not that complicated, but we do want time to walk you through it and let you ask questions and obviously give us your direction. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Moving on to item number 12, consider providing directions to staff to create the position of Development Director. Mr. Burrows?
So this has been a topic that we've looked at a number of years, called it a couple of different things, but we had a good discussion at the Marketing Ad Hoc most recently, and there's a real recognition from the staff side that the airport's getting busier, and I think from our perspective, we would very much support crafting a position that really is focused on increasing our throughput to bring more business into the airport. And that's really the intent of this position. We, as I mentioned, did have a chat about it at the ad hoc, but would literally look to see if the commission would be amenable to directing staff to move forward, to develop the position, and then our request would be to actually bring that description, because we've just got Ms. Pritchett back. Thank you, Kat. That's good to have you. And I've tasked her to be ready for this so that we can come back to the ad hoc with a recommendation and the synopsis of that, and then move that forward as quickly as possible. The funding for that, as our Vice President mentioned, is interrelated to some budget adjustments and budget prep for next year, so those are aligned. But obviously I've thought about this, as has ALCA and Bill for that matter, and there's a way to get there. So would welcome the opportunity and at the pleasure of the commission to move this along. Thanks.
Very good. I'm grateful to be part of that marketing ad hoc committee. And I'll tell you that I think there is broad consensus from committee members on the ad hoc marketing committee to make sure that we remain competitive. I think that's the edge that we need to really provide here for the future and direction of our community. is having those candid and robust conversations as to what does the future look like. I'll also want to encourage the board members to consider the strategic work plan. I think it's time that with the new addition of members to the board, we need to also be very conscientious of what the strategic plan looks like. So I'll ask that our executive director please begin working towards that stead to include a workshop of strategic plan. What does the future look like? What are the opportunities for the airport in a strategic plan workshop? So at this time, I will open it up to board members. What say you on the providing direction for a development director?
I guess just to make sure we're clear, I would move that we go ahead and direct staff to look into creating this position. And we did discuss it. So my move basically is to create the position, but we also want to make sure that maybe we have the ad hoc committee look at, the scope, job description, experience, timeline, compensation, all those things, and then bring that back to the full board for a complete approval to make sure that everybody's on the same page, so to speak. So that would be my motion, to create this position, bring it in front of the ad hoc committee to further look at it, and then bring it back for full board.
Okay, sure.
Second.
There's a motion by Board Member Popescu with a second by Mayor Navarro. Sir, do you have any comments? Mr. Navarro? All right. Are there any other comments, suggestions, questions?
Just, I'm in full support of it. I think that we need to do this, especially to continue to head in the trajectory that I think the airport's headed in. So I'm all for it.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. All right. So, Madam Clerk, if you would please.
Just to clarify, so the motion was to create a draft position, if you will, have it brought to the ad hoc committee for review, and then return it to the commission.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just had to get that straight. Member Navarro?
Yes.
Member Popescu?
Yes.
Member Lilburn?
Yes.
Member Valdivia?
Yes.
Member Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. At this time, I think that we'll move on to section J, which I don't see any. And then at this time, are there any public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to commissioner comments. Any commissioner comments?
Fine, thanks.
Seeing none. All right. Well, we appreciate it. We'll call for an adjournment. And thank you very much for joining us. Drive safe.